Okay, welcome. I'd like to call to order the Waunakee Community School District Annual Meeting and Budget Hearing for 2021. And I'll open it up for an election of a chairperson for this meeting.
Last 2 years.
Need a motion for it.
Motion for Jack to continue.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, Jack.
Okay, thank you for your attendance. Reading of the official notice, budget hearing,
Okay.
and annual. Judith.
The notice is hereby given to qualified electors of the Waunakee Community School District that the annual meeting of said district for the transaction of business will be held in the District Administration and Maintenance Center, 905 Bethel Circle, Waunakee, on the 18th day of October 2021 at 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Judith. We'll go to the budget summary and district goals report, district administration, and executive director of operations.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate it. So for members of the public, we have all of the handouts outside if you happen to see them, but if you didn't, you're welcome to go grab some. So everything that we're showing tonight, we have a copy out front for you. You can either grab it now or on your way out the door. Before the annual meeting, there is a process called a budget hearing. So during the budget hearing, the school district presents information on the budget. At the end of the presentation of financial information, members of the public are welcome to ask any questions related to the budget process, any of the information we share with you, or any budget questions. Once the budget hearing is concluded, we then move on to the annual meeting portion of the agenda. So we'll bear with you, if you want to just bear with us for a little bit, we're going to do the budget hearing first, and I'm going to be sharing some financial information. First of all, in the Waunakee Tribune, with the notice that Judy mentioned, the district is required to publish the budget according to a format that the state of Wisconsin provides to us. So this publication that you see, copies out front again, has been published in the Tribune as required by the state of Wisconsin. Going back to the presentation, one of the things that we like to share is the budget process is about a 10 to 11 month process in a school district, going all the way back to January and really concluding at the end of the process with an annual community meeting, as well as the school board setting the final budget and tax levy, which takes place next Monday. By state law, Judy, the clerk, is required to certify the tax levy by November 10th. So we're near the end of the process this year for the budget. I'm not going to go over these in detail, but I am going to share with you that the school board has been engaged in the budget priority process going all the way back to last February and March. We have copies of what the school board has been looking at for budget priorities and district priorities in the presentation. And I'm going to check and see if Randy Gutenberg has anything that he wants to offer on these slides to folks. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next part. Randy?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Let me just take about 5 minutes and just kind of review those for you so that you can see exactly where the priorities fell for this year. These were set really and jointly with the board and the administration, particularly through evaluation processes and also kind of the self-eval of the board. I'm starting off with, and I'm not going to go read through all 3 slides here, but I'm just going to give you a high-level summary of really where we focused. This budget really was focused on getting kids back to school. That's really where we started. We've had a challenging couple years here with the pandemic in place, and the whole effort this year was really starting off with, and foremost on our minds was returning kids to school. Looking at ways that we could support student achievement of our students, recognizing that we had some challenges with student mental health, wanting to promote and continue to support remote learning for families that chose that as a model, and then also putting into GACE our mitigation efforts to make sure we could keep kids in school. The board put forth in this budget a number of priorities, interventionists in our schools to help with kids who were struggling academically, so we had some supports there for them. Also, supports for mental health of students, making sure we had time set aside, that we had staff available to work with our students. Adjusting class sizes or maintaining smaller class sizes was a priority going into this budget. And then also looking for those supports in our schools that allow our staff to do their job. One of the things that you've seen if you've been watching the board meetings recently, we've had growth in our English language population, and the board has been very supportive of adding staff to help us meet some of those needs and other specific needs of our students. As we've come out of the last year, we've also realized the importance of our communication efforts. I appreciate folks being here tonight and providing their comments as we've gone forward over the last year. I think we've all learned a lot. Annie Blackburn is our communications specialist, and at the previous board meeting, she presented her communications plan, which was one of the goals of the board. Part of that includes engagement on very specific topics. We have a number of folks here tonight who are representing the DEI efforts. I mean, that was a conversation we had with our public here just a few weeks ago. And we have other engagement opportunities on different topics, from student achievement to other ones yet to be determined, in November, January, and March. We're also in the process of a branding process, which is a piece that we've are long overdue for a long time, as far as taking a look at our visual brand as a district. When we take a look at things that are other pieces of the goals, the DEI pieces certainly are present within our goals documents, and also the work that was brought forward by the DEI ad hoc committee. Those recommendations are pieces that still need to be worked on throughout the board and designated how that work continues, and that'll be a piece that will be forthcoming from the board. The last school board meeting, we also gave an update on facility and growth planning. We're seeing that our student population is continuing to grow. We've grown approximately 80 students above where we projected our budget last year. So again, moving forward with the growth happening in our community, which is precipitating our need to focus on facility planning and the potential for a fall 2022 referendum. As we start to look at our budget, which is part of one of the pieces here tonight, it's looking at making sure that our budget meets our strategic needs. I think this budget has certainly, and our board has supported a lot of things that have helped us to move our education of our students and support of our students and staff forward. It's been focused on specific student needs and specific needs that have been identified and brought forth by the community. It's also built off of fiscal responsibility and trying to take a look at how we can utilize our dollars best that have been trusted to us by our community. Some of the things you've seen listed within our goals is to address fund balance, which I believe has already been well on its way to meeting the objectives that we had intended. And finally, we are a people business. The impacts we have with kids is based on the quality of people we have in front of them every day. So a priority of recruitment and retention of our staff is a priority that this budget has put forth as well. So as I turn it back over to Steve, I just want to say I think that the priorities that the board has put forward are appropriate, and I feel that this budget has gone forward and supported those ends.
Thank you, Randy. I'm going to take a few minutes and share some information about how the state budget process went and how that affected our district. The school board was planning for a state budget process that looked different the way that it ended up. So the way the state budget ended up is the revenue cap formula was increased by both 0 this year and 0 next year. So as a school district, no additional state resources came through the formula that controls the majority of the revenues in the school district. So both this year and next year are going to be 0. So on the state funding level, this was a challenging 2-year budget to work through our planning process. As you can see on the revenue cap formula on the far right, you just see a very small change. That change was related to our student enrollment, but generally speaking, the state revenues in the revenue limit formula basically remained the same as they were last year. General aid, the state of Wisconsin did contribute an additional $110 million across the state of Wisconsin for general aid resources. However, under the state revenue cap formula, increases in state aid are offset or by effects on the property tax levy. So we were not able to spend those funds as a district because the revenue cap formula went up by 0. The governor, in his state budget veto message, included an additional $100 million for public schools utilizing federal funds. The estimate for our district is about $475,000, so that was very positive news. Our understanding is that these funds will be provided in the first year of the 2-year state budget, and it is one-time funds. The state did invest some additional resources into state special education categorical aid, about $18 million this year and about $70 million next year. Overall, it's basically enough this year to keep the dollar amount about exactly where it is and where it has been. So again, very little changes in special education aid. Federal funding, so this is something you might have heard about or seen some stories on. There were some districts that received some pretty significant amounts of federal funding. Our district was not one of those districts. Generally speaking, the funding was distributed under Title I allocations. So our district is receiving relatively low dollar amounts from federal funds this year. The state legislature did approve an in-person hours instruction process for specific districts that did not meet a minimum threshold of federal funding. Our district did participate in that process, and we're receiving about $378,000 for in-person instructional hours last year. And then ESSER 3 is the last round of federal funding. We are still waiting for all of the final information on ESSER 3, but we do know it will be at least in the neighborhood of $550,000 for our district. Randy mentioned some of the decisions that the school board made back in May. The school board made some additions to our student support programs with the intention to be able to utilize federal ESSER funds to fund these programs. As a result of the revenue limit increase of 0, we do need to look towards federal funds to be able to support these programs that the school board approved back in May. So you see some of those positions here on the screen. Local property taxes, one of the challenging positions that school boards are in is that there is a school levy credit that is a significant investment by the state of Wisconsin, but school districts do not know that dollar amount when the levy is being certified at the end of October. Generally speaking, property wealthy, high spending districts receive more funding through a tax credit than general school aids. At this point, that dollar amount has remained relatively stable in the last few years. Randy referenced enrollment. Our official enrollment count for the district resulted in 4,391 students. That was an increase of 85 students. We were estimating an increase of 10 students. So the student enrollment increase certainly exceeded our planning process for this fall. The student enrollment count data is available for anyone who would be interested in looking at it. You can see a recent history of our enrollment. We obviously had the dip last year during the pandemic year where we went down to 4,306 students. And we just continued now with our increase in enrollment that we've seen in recent years. The school board does continuously track our student enrollment and our building capacity for facility planning. This is just a quick slide that shows how we are tracking that data from one year to the next and always keeping our eye on the enrollment of a particular school and the capacity that exists in that school. Across the district, We estimate that we have capacity for 4,706 students. That means that we have about a capacity of 315 students available throughout our schools. Expenditures, the expenditure budget for the district is a 0.8% increase. We did approve additional teaching positions, paraeducator positions. The school board has approved wage increases for this year. And we do continually keep a $100,000 contingency fund in the event that an issue occurs during the school year. Just some historical information for you on the expenditures in our district. Cost per student, we like to share cost per student information with the community. You can see how that's changed in recent years. We're estimating to be around $12,600 this year on a cost per student basis. Revenue, I did mention earlier that the state of Wisconsin is investing significant dollars in the equalization aid formula. However, districts are not able to spend those funds when the revenue limit increases 0. So our Fund 10 tax levy actually decreases accordingly as a result of those additional funds. We have kept track over the years of where our revenue is coming from. There's 3 major sources of revenue. There's state aid, there is a per pupil aid, which is a relatively new form of funding in school finance, and then the property tax levy. And you can see that they're all in a relatively tight range from year to year. Tax levy, the tax levy history is shown on this slide, just historical information to share with the community. Tax rate, you can see going back quite a few years where the tax rate of the district is. The tax rate is a calculation of the total value of property throughout the entire Waunakee Community School District divided by the tax levy approved by the school board creates a tax rate. If you can see, for the last couple of years, the school board has had a goal of tax rate consistency across fiscal years, and that has been a topic that has had much discussion at the school board level. The levy for this year, the total property tax levy, is included on this slide, as well as a statement down at the bottom, just to share with those of you in attendance this evening. Because of the unique nature of the Wisconsin school finance system, the school board is required to change the property tax levy next week to comply with Wisconsin state law to incorporate our enrollment count from this past September, our state aid amount, which we learned about last week Friday, and then the property values, which we learned about earlier this month. So we have further information on the tax levy here, but I do want to just share some information with everyone. The school board is looking to approve next week what is called a debt service defeasance. In effect, it's prepaying existing debt. The school board is looking to do that to keep a consistent tax rate from year to year. The school board did see a presentation from our financial advisor indicating that prepaying a little over $3 million worth of debt would save future taxpayers about $1.1 million in interest. This can be accomplished while still maintaining the same tax rate that we had last year. One of the things that you may notice is that the board is recommending a Fund 41 or Capital Expansion Fund tax levy of 0. The reason for that is the district had a credit rating agency report that resulted in a downgrade of the district's credit. The credit agency did not recognize our Capital Expansion Fund, which is basically a way for the school board to set aside funds for maintenance. It can be done inside a district's general fund or this special fund that the state of Wisconsin allows. Because of the fact that a national credit rating agency is not recognizing those funds, the school board is making a decision to move those back to the general fund of the district to seek an improvement in the credit rating for the district. This is the equalized value, and again, this comprises all of the district, all of the municipalities that represent the Waunakee Community School District. Tax rate. So again, in recent years, the school board has had a goal to keep the tax rate consistent. You can see going back to 18-19, $10.86, $10.86. And that is as close as you can get it to keep it in that kind of a range, with the goal of having a similar rate across time to allow for community members, businesses, and families to plan ahead for one of the largest expenditures that folks have, which is the property tax bill. We do have a frequently asked questions document out in the hallway for those of you that are interested in taking a little deeper dive into what does this mean. We do have that out there available for you to take a look at. Equalized value, or the property value in our community, that information is shared from the state of Wisconsin on October 1st. One of the things that's always important to share with the community regarding a school district property tax levy is that probably the one main thing that a school board can control is looking at the tax rate from one year to another. But shifts occur with taxes between municipalities, which is completely outside of the control of a school board. So that second bullet point provides some examples of the town of Westport, where the town of Westport's percentage of the school taxes has varied from 23.6% to 22.7%. The reason why that varies is it depends on reassessment cycles that occur within a community, new houses, new properties, new businesses that end up being added to the tax rolls, and just variations that occur between communities in the way the total values are calculated by the state. So even if the school board approved a zero change, it can result in tax changes on an individual property because of the way shifts occur within various municipalities with the district's property taxes. A district fund balance is basically the difference between all of the financial assets of a district and the liabilities or who we owe money to. And you can see that the district's fund balance currently is at $7.6 million. That's 13.7% of the next year's budget. And this is our Fund 10, our main accounting fund. Next steps with the budget, I did mention that the school board will be meeting next Monday night for a special school board meeting. The school board will be taking a look at the September enrollment count information, budget changes that have taken place since July when the board approved the third draft of the budget, the final district property values, which was released earlier this month, and then the final district revenue cap amount, which again we were able to calculate last Friday. One of the reasons why the school board has traditionally recommended holding the annual meeting on this date is that the state releases their information on October 15th, which does allow us to answer questions from the community with actual information for this year and relate it to what the school board will be voting on next week, Monday. Some communities have this meeting in July or August when this information is just purely an estimate. The school board has preferred to have this information available and have this meeting in late October so that we can share this final information with the community. One of the other things that the school board will be looking at next week is how to keep the district tax rate at $10.89. That will result in a debt service defeasance that would be higher than what has originally been estimated. The reason for that is the property values in the Waunakee community for the school district increased by 8% this year. which is a significant increase from one year to the next. So the board will be taking a look at this next Monday night. We do like to share that the financial information of a school district is reviewed by a wide range of stakeholders. It includes the school board treasurer, Jack Heineman, who does look at every invoice in the district that's $5,000 or more and above. The school board budget committee meets on a monthly basis to review fiscal matters for the district. All 7 members of the school board, of course, vote on major school finance topics like the budget. The Department of Public Instruction reviews all financial information from school districts. The school board does hire an external independent auditor who reviews all of the financial information for the district. And then there's external private businesses like Moody's and Standard & Poor's who also review the financial information from the school district. And then any citizen who wishes to review information is welcome to at any time. So our financial information is completely transparent and available for anyone who's interested to see it. This is just an example of that bond rating that I referred to earlier, an example of what an external review looked like back in April and how the school board has decided to respond to that review. We do like to share information at this meeting with the public on just a couple high-level data points and how we relate to other districts in Dane County. The tax rate, you can see that the Waunakee School District with the red arrow is about right in the middle. So we have historically been not a high tax rate, but not a low tax rate in the Dane County area. We basically have been right about average for a number of years. So we sit right in the middle with our tax rate for the district and have for quite some time. On a spending basis, Waunakee's right here. We are typically the 3rd or the 4th lowest spending district in Dane County. That's not because of any decisions that the local school board has made. It is because of the fact that there is a state of Wisconsin revenue limit formula that has been in place for over 25 years that locked districts into their spending all the way back to the 1993, prior to the 1993 school year. And ever since then, districts have just continuously moved forward by either an amount that is approved by the state legislature or through a local referendum. So if you were to go back 25 years ago, Waunakee is going to be in the 3rd or 4th lowest spending district in Dane County. And basically, we're about in the same spot 25 years later. So every year that we present this information, it just kind of shows where we continue to be under that state revenue limit system. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back to the chair of the meeting, where any members of the public is welcome to ask any budget questions related to anything that we shared or anything else that's on your mind. Once the budget hearing piece is closed, the chair of the meeting will move through the annual meeting agenda items, but I'm going to turn it back to the chair to see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Please state your name.
So my name is Tim Kiefer. Is this mic, do I need to turn it on, or is it already on?
You're good.
Okay. So my name is Tim Kiefer, and I live in the village of Waunakee. And I'll just point out that because of the way this room is arranged, there's no way for me to face everyone in the room at the same time. It's just not set up that way. So the fact that I'm going to face that way towards where I think the camera is, or the YouTube live stream, that's just out of courtesy to people who are watching online. It's not any slight to people who I'm turning my back to, because it's only out of necessity. Or is that the way? Is that where the camera is? Okay, well, if you don't mind, I'm going to face towards that. That's where most people are, anyway. So I do serve on the Dane County Board of Supervisors, which is the legislative branch of county government. And the district I represent does represent much of, but not all of, the Waunakee School District. And I wanted to say just a few comments about the relationship between the budget we are voting on tonight, which is the school district budget, and the county budget, which I, as a county board member, will be voting on next month in November, and that's in the committee process right now. One of the biggest issues we face at the county level is the question of renovating the county jail, and that's a subject that's far beyond the scope of this meeting, so I'm not going to get into it, other than to say people have frequently said to me, why can't we not spend money on the jail, but instead spend money on schools? And the short answer to that is that there are two different budgets, two different processes. One is a school board, one is a county board. We don't have the option on county board to just divert money to schools. We can't do that. But what we can do, and what I do in making decisions on county board, is I'm always aware that I think investing monies in schools is a good investment. Just from a return on investment standpoint, it is. And that's why one reason I want to make sure we limit the amount of money we spend on things like jails is because I want to free up that money for things like schools, because I know ultimately it comes from the same property taxes. And I would rather invest taxpayer money in providing a quality education for a 5-year-old than to wait 20 years so that we can then have to provide a jail cell for a 25-year-old. It is a better investment of taxpayer money to spend that money on providing a quality education rather than having to provide a quality jail cell. And it is important we have a humane jail, but I would rather invest the money in education if we possibly can do so. I do think that we're getting a great return on investment here in the district, and one way we see that is the people who are qualifying as national merit semifinalists. Members of the board know that every year when I come to this meeting, I always mention the people who were named semifinalists for the National Merit Scholarship Competition, which is less than 1% of all high school students nationwide. There's 2 semifinalists this year from Waunakee High School. They are Lincoln Ogren and Thomas Troster. Hope I pronounced your names right. Congratulations to them. And I think it really shows that the money we're putting into the school district is having real benefits, because that is something that's very, very hard to get. And the fact that there are 2 students from our high school that achieved that honor, I think really shows we're doing the right thing. Final point I want to make tonight, I just want to say something briefly about this meeting and the importance of freedom of speech, and also the importance of civility in public life. And for me, when I think about freedom of speech, the thing that comes to my mind right away is that famous painting by Norman Rockwell titled Freedom of Speech. And if you don't know what painting I'm talking about, you can use the magic of the internet and quickly look it up on your phone, either now when you get home, you just type in Norman Rockwell Freedom of Speech, and you'll see this picture of someone who's at a Vermont town hall meeting speaking. And that was painted by Norman Rockwell during World War II as part of a series about the freedoms of America. And I did a little bit of research and found out that it was based on a real event where someone actually was at a town hall meeting in Vermont, and the question was whether or not to build a new school. And apparently everyone in the room wanted to build a new school except one guy, and he got up and he spoke about it, and everyone disagreed with him, but they let him speak because we agree with the principle of freedom of speech. We may not agree with what the person's saying, but we want to agree with the freedom to make your voice heard. I think that's very important in America.
Hey, Tim,
And
we've got 3 minutes,
I will,
so you're coming up.
yeah, am I out of 3 minutes?
I'll give you.
I have 3 minutes more. Let me wrap up. Freedom of speech is important, and that's why I think that it's important that people be here at this meeting expressing opinions as shown by the signs. And I'm very grateful that everyone is here, and now we're going to get on to considering the budget. I appreciate being given the opportunity to speak, but I don't want to overstay my welcome. So with that, I will conclude my remarks, and again, thank you for allowing my testimony here tonight.
Thank you, Tim. The next item is review of the minutes for the 2020 annual meeting. I'll need a motion to approve those and a and a second.
Motion to approve. Second.
And then we'll have a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The annual meeting minutes for 2020 have been passed. And then receive and accept the treasurer report. Steve went through the budget and the budget process. This is the funding and beginning balances, revenues, expenses, and so forth. Two things that I'd like to point out in this particular report. In the general fund, we've got a overage of 1.1, a little over 1.1 million, 1.2 million. The board has directed administration to come up with a 3-year plan that generally comes from our buildings where we don't use it or lose it. You know, we give them the opportunity to make good decisions on spending our tax dollars. So what we've done is directed administration to present a 3-year plan at the May meeting on how those funds are going to be used. The other item, as Steve has pointed out, our capital Fund 40, capital projects funds, we'll be zeroing that out over time. The reason being is the Moody's. Those funds will go into Fund 10, which is the general fund, and the board has put a policy in place where there's still dedicated dollars to referendum dollars that the community has voted on to still be funded or spent in that area. Other than that, any questions? So we'll need a vote on this. So we accept.
Motion to approve the treasurer's report.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes. Okay, now we go to Resolution A, which authorizes the school board to charge student fees. Now, what we're doing is, be it resolved that the Board of Education, Waunakee, State of Wisconsin, is hereby directed to charge student fees, and as such, costs shall be set by said school board.
If I can just ask that anyone who makes the motion in a second, if they just use their name so that it would help Rebecca as she's recording the minutes for this meeting.
I move to approve student fees as stated in the material.
And Tim Kiefer, I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it passes.
If I can interject for a second, Jack, this is one of those meetings that where, as residents of the community, you are able to vote. This is not just a board vote on items. So as there are the motions, as you've seen, come from the audience, the vote can also be, the voice vote can also take place from the audience as well.
Thank you. Salaries and expenses for school board officers.
Dean Kaminsky with motion to approve the board salaries as presented.
Mary Pine Becker, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Salaries pass. We go to Resolution C, school lunch program authorization.
I move to authorize the food service program as stated in the material.
Kristen Runge, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? School lunch program authorization passes. Resolution D authorizes the school board to engage legal counsel if needed.
Robert McPherson, I move to accept the authorization for legal counsel as presented.
Kiefer seconds.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Authorization passes. Resolution E, set date and hour for 2022 annual meeting, or authorize board to set date.
Dave Betcher, make a motion to authorize the board to set the next annual
The
meeting.
resolution for this, the date and hour is set forth.
Do we have a second?
Dave and Sheila.
Dave and Sheila. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution D passes, or E passes. Resolution F, this is for transportation, authorizing us to provide the bus transportation.
Dean Kaminsky, has a resolution after as presented for approval.
Justin is second.
We've got a motion and a second, first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Transportation passes. Resolution G, adoption of tax levy.
Deanne Munster, I motion to approve resolution G as stated.
Tim Bell second.
We've got a first, we've got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The resolution passes. Okay, now, person attending the meeting may request information of any topic relative to current policy and procedures of the school. And again, what I'd like to remind everybody, when you come up and speak at the mic, we'd like you to provide your name, address, and we'll provide 3 minutes for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Joel Lewis. I have to get my address. 5299 Easy Street in Waunakee. I'm a concerned parent and I support DEI efforts. So my question to the board is, since you took over the responsibilities of the DEI committee, when will that committee be formed? And then a second part to my question is, any board member that is on that DEI committee, what training will they get in terms of DEI so they understand the full scope of it? Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan. So at our meeting in a week ago Monday, a week ago today, we did decide to make the DEI committee more of a district committee. There will be 3 board members on it. The 3 board members will be myself, Mark Hetzel, and Jack Heineman. It's on our, it will be on our agenda next week on Monday. We meet to set the levy, and I ask that that agenda be on that committee or on that meeting so that we can get some board input as we start formulating that committee. That committee will include administration and other voices. I mean, we want students and we want parents and we want staff members. I can't outline at this time exactly what that committee will look like. I need board input into that. But as we move forward, starting next Monday, discussing it first as a full board, and then I want that committee, or I would prefer that that committee get together prior to November, so that there isn't a big gap in time. The mission, I see the mission, and I think many of the board members weighed in last Monday. We want the efforts of the DEI to move forward, and we felt that it was better served and maybe more effective if we bring it closer to our administrative team. Many of the things that you have identified, I think, need to go back to our administrative team so that they can kind of look at how to respond and how to move those issues forward. It isn't that we do not support DEI, we very much support DEI. So I apologize if any of you got that impression that we were not in support. We want to move the work closer to the administrative team to make it more effective. And we need your voices, and we will be looking for participation in as we reform this committee. I
And
don't
as
know
far
if
as your-
any other board wants to.
Yeah, as far as your question regarding training, I think that's a great idea.
Yes.
So we'll definitely be talking how to do
Yeah,
that.
absolutely, Joel. I think not only do we need training, I mean, I want to look at staff and how staff responds to some of our student needs. And I think there's a lot of training and development that we need to do for that. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Do we have any other comments?
Hi, my name is Krista Schmelk, and I live at 500 Hillcrest. And my question is a little bit off of Joel's question. If there will be students on this committee, I want to make sure that whoever the adults are on the committee will be held accountable and trained to work with students that have needs or already feel marginalized. I heard those students speak so bravely, and then hearing that the committee was dismantled, and my kids were at the meeting, right? I want to make sure I can tell them, and that those kids who spoke so bravely are protected. So I want to ask, how are we going to do that? Will there be training? Will there be accountability with who is in leadership?
Well, I think we just discussed that we'll be looking at how we can train our staff and our board as we move through the process. I too also want to apologize. Yes, we came down with what seemed like a harsh, we just need to stoppage and stuff. In my mind, it was a pause to be able to restructure and think about how we want to move forward and do it the right way. So whether that came off too harsh, my apologies. That's not what's in my head. So hopefully we can, when we restructure, we can make it better and stronger committee than what we had. So, but thank you to everybody who's put the effort in over the last year. So I think you did a wonderful job.
This is Philip Keegan, 1110 Waterville Drive. To both of your points, can you give an estimated timeline on when the committee may reform? Can we talk quarters? Can we talk rough months? Are we looking at weeks, months, 6 months before the DA committee is reformed?
I'm hoping that we meet before our November board meeting. The board members and the administration that will be on that committee. And at that point, we will look at how to involve more people, and we will bring those, what we come up with back to the board so we get board support. And at that point, I'm hoping that we can move forward with other participation. So I'm hoping we're up and running in November.
I want to be clear, maybe, Joan, to his question, was you were saying up and running in November. That's the Board of Administration. I think they're asking, when will the DEI committee as a whole be back up and running?
I'm hoping that we bring to the November 8th meeting our ideas about membership, and if the board supports that idea, I'm hoping that we can begin to bring together that larger group later that month.
Thank you, David. That clarified my question. I appreciate that.
Our pens matched, Ted. So, yes, right? So my question is in conjunction with that. Kristen Runge, 1316 Lawton Court. And my question is, in between now and the beginning of a fully enfranchised board, if there is an issue related to DEI, what should the student or the parent who are affected, who do they go to? And I'm asking this because by default, the presence of a DEI ad hoc committee implied that if something was happening at the school, there would be an organization that was outside students and teachers that could address it and serve at least as a sounding board or a receptacle for information about what has happened. So between now and the active enfranchisement, what do we do? And I'm holding this mic because I think I accidentally took it out of the stand. There we go.
Well, I think the administration's always there. You know, they're the ones that are here full-time. They're the ones that should be contacted if there's an incident, both in the school and then also at the district office as well. So I don't see this being a long-term hiatus of this program. And I think maybe we look at the ad hoc committee a little differently. We looked at it as an area to gather information, to be able to bring us information to make decisions with our administration. I don't think it's, whether that's great that they felt safe to take it to the ad hoc committee, we want to get to the point where we're taking care of incidents both in the school and in the district office immediately, and not go to an ad hoc committee then to bring it back. So, and I know that's part of what the ad hoc committee has already talked about, is a reporting tool and quick action to be able to confront those issues. So.
Hi, I'm Amy Lewis, 5299 Easy Street, Waunakee. I think we all did hear last week that DEI was going to continue. I think we're just concerned with what exactly that means. My sign reads, I want real DEI. My concern is I heard a lot of community members, and I kind of feel like you all fed into the diversity of thought that we all keep hearing. I even think I heard some of the board members talk about diversity of thought and making sure that's going to be on the next committee. I would just like, and maybe it can't be answered tonight because I don't think there's an actual definition. What does that mean? Like, what does it really mean to have diversity of thought? I want an actual definition. I think the whole community deserves a definition of what the heck that means.
Well, I don't think we're the ones using it, so I don't think we're the ones that define it.
Are you going to be welcoming that in? And if you are, then I think we still need a definition of what that means then. And again, it probably can't be answered tonight because I don't really think it's a real thing.
I think that's a discussion we need to have internally.
Robert McPherson, 1703 Alexandria Court. Extremely supportive of DEI. I'm going to ask a non-DEI question, so I apologize. It's actually a split question. The first one is in the presentation tonight, and I probably should have asked this earlier, so I apologize, but it was talking about how Arboretum is over cap. I was wondering if there's any comments that the board can make about how that's going to impact as that new neighborhood comes online that's being built right across the street from Savannah Village. My second question is, as I think it's well known to the public, I'm very much against the village's efforts to enact new tax incremental districts. I feel very strongly that it impacts directly the tax levy, that it impacts the school district. So I'm curious if these, with the fact that the school district is going to probably be asked to go vote with the joint review board in about a month or two for another tax incremental district for the rest of the business park. Obviously, you guys don't want to tip your hand early, but is there a specific policy that's going to be taken, or maybe some concessions that they would ask from the village in conjunction with the fact that there's a lot more students potentially coming to Arboretum? I ask also as a genuinely interested parent of a student at Arboretum, if it is starting to get overcrowded, that's concerning to me. So just wondering if that could be expounded upon a little bit.
Thank you.
Robert, the question about overcrowding at our schools, it's something we've dealt with over time. I mean, it's a piece right now. It's part of why we're also looking at referendum items in a year or so. But in the meantime, we certainly are looking at class sizes. We do have to occasionally move kids from one attendance area to another, and I think that's probably your short-term interim type piece. But over time, we have to take a look at some point in the future as far as how we look at where our boundaries fall, particularly as we have continued growth within our community, any additional elementary schools or expansion of elementary schools. So that's going to be a piece we have to look at some point. But I think the short-term piece until we get to that point is trying to balance the class sizes, and then as we need to move some kids around, which we've done with all of our schools.
Randy, could I ask a question kind of relating to the school sizing?
Sure.
I noticed in the report, the middle school is showing that it has more capacity than they have students right now, but we just had to buy a portable classroom to put in the parking lot, not the parking lot, on the blacktop.
Yeah.
So is that capacity number for the middle school counting both, well, all 4 of the portable classrooms?
I don't know, Steve, what you put up. I saw that number. I mean,
No, the portable classrooms aren't in there, and the capacity listed on that slide was a capacity calculated from an external analysis that we had quite a few years ago that defined the capacity of each of our schools. I know there was some different viewpoints on what that capacity number was, but it's a number that we've used as a frame of reference, not necessarily that it's exactly correct, but it was calculated probably, what was there, Andy, 7-8 years ago?
Was that the number from Rockwell?
It was from Epstein UN the very first time we worked with them. We brought them into the district to complete a capacity study and working with Mark Roffer. So
I remember at the very beginning, that was roughly when I first got on the board, and I was asking the question then during the last referendum, how is this middle school number, because the middle school number jumped from when we were proposing the referendum to after,
right.
And they said because of the mobile classroom.
Right.
And it's like, I said, we shouldn't be counting that. I mean, I don't count trailers as capacity of a building. And I think we really need to go back and look at that.
Right.
I mean, we had to buy a portable classroom for a reason. It wasn't because we were under capacity.
Right.
And that number needs to be actual as we start looking at this.
And one of the things that you'll see in December when we come to the board with Mark's report is we've asked him to look not only at resident enrollment, but also actual enrollment that includes any of the open enrollment or other kids that are within our district. So you'll see more of an actual number there, Dave. I think the other piece is, and that's a piece that you will see there as well, is we have kind of the capacity with and without the portables. I mean, that's an important piece, is to show kind of what those have added to us. I think that the number that we have up on the screen here tonight is one that we've modified in previous presentations to have more of a functional capacity of that building, which I believe is in the mid-600s. So we're right up against that with our enrollment that we have there. And then when you look at it just functionally, that's what's really caused us to have to add the portables as far as how we use that space. But we'll make sure that as we present that at the December meeting, we differentiate all of those pieces so you can see that specifically. And we'll also look at it from a residents enrolled versus, which is how Mark usually reports his numbers, to an actual number of students, so you can see that. Because that'll be a piece that as we start to talk more with the community, we'll be articulating actual student numbers versus resident numbers. And we'll differentiate what those two numbers mean.
I think Robert had one other question about our TIF votes. Jack, you're the one that attended those meetings. Want to comment on that, the policy that we use?
Yeah, I think what we look at is how it affects the district, and you know, basically, you know, what we'll do is talk about it and see if it makes sense.
I think Robert,
really, you know, if you want to expand on that.
One of the things we did, Robert, about 4 years ago, Steve, we put forth kind of a position statement of the board as far as how they take a look at TIFs, and that has to do with kind of that but-for test. And I think that was a piece, and then it also gives some authority, because all of these projects have their own nuances with them as far as how they make sense within the community, and also kind of all of those different parameters. So the board had put forth, I believe it's a 2-page document, one that explains how TIF impacts us financially, and how it impacts us from a taxing standpoint. And then the second point is giving some guidance to the person who's assigned from the board as far as how they vote. So Jack being our liaison this year, that'll be a piece that we'll review as a board before it goes to the review board. And then Jack has some discretion once he gets there.
Randy, is that on our website or?
Do you know where that's at, Steve, I think?
It's not on our website, but I can get it for you, Jack.
Can you just put it on the
Yep.
website?
Yeah, we can add that to the website.
Would like to see that.
That was more of a position document by the board. It's not necessarily a policy, but it was something that we discussed as far as how we approach TIFs generally as a district.
If I may. Steve, could you go to, I think it's slide 39?
Sure.
The one that's titled Budget Financial Reviews. So my question is, it appears on slide 39, I'll wait till you get to it. Okay, yep, you just passed it. Oh, there it is.
This one?
No, one more down.
39,
Yeah.
got it, yes.
The question I have is with regards to the bond rating. I see the bond rating was downgraded from AA2 to A1. And as you know, when the bond rating goes down, the interest rate goes up, which has a negative impact on finances. Could you talk about the bond rating situation? Why did we get downgraded, and what's the response of the school district, and how will this affect things in terms of interest rates? I know it's something significant at the county level as well. We always try to keep our bond rating as high as possible. So could you speak to that?
Well, I think, one of the things that we did is because of the our bond rating organizations, as Steve has pointed out, they didn't recognize our Fund 40, which is our maintenance budget. So what we did to improve that is to move we're going to spend down our Fund 40, and then those maintenance dollars going forward will come out of our general fund, which our bond rating organizations recognize. So that's what we've done. What it does for our interest rate, I think you can handle that, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. One of the things that the school board did was react to concerns that we heard in the community that the school board was not separating funds out for maintenance. The state does allow that, so the board put maintenance funds into this separate accounting fund and had been building that up over a period of time. However, in a recent financial review from Moody's, they decided that they weren't going to count that as a fund balance for the district. Our financial advisor and the district continuously provided information showing the overall financial health of the district had not changed. If you would add together our fund balance or our resources in Fund 10, which is the general fund, and Fund 41, which is our maintenance fund, together the district has the same level of resources that we've always had. The board changed our policy to then say, okay, we do want to have as low of interest rates as we can when we go out to debt and to borrow. So therefore, we're going to move those funds back into Fund 10, which is the fund that's recognized by the bond rating agency. We're not in a position right now where we have to issue debt at the current credit rating of the district, so we don't know what the exact interest rate would be. The board is hopeful that by making that policy change, that sometime next spring, when Moody's takes another look at our district, we may be considered for an upgrade to go back to where we were. It's just a very unique situation that the board was responding to what they heard from the community, but then are now having to change gears and go back to the way things actually were before because of the way that this external agency is looking at our finances. But in effect, the board has about the same resources that we've had. It's just in two different places, so to speak.
The action tonight on Fund 40 was in direct response to your question, Tim. It was to get the money back into Fund 10 so our bond rating panel can take a look at it and then readjust our hope is readjust our bond rating. Within Fund 10, we can then designate money to maintenance if we decide to. So it's really kind of a shell game with where the dollars fall within the funds. They're always been there. They just haven't been recognized by Moody's. So we're moving them back to meet more of their needs than some of the kind of philosophies that maybe we prefer.
And if I can ask just one really quick follow-up on this. I understand these bond ratings are done by people on Wall Street in New York who've never been to Waunakee and aren't here on the ground and all that. And there's multiple agencies such as Standard & Poor's. Do we have ratings from Standard & Poor's or any of the other bond rating agencies? And if so, did they also do a downgrade at the same time, or was this solely something that Moody's did?
It was solely something that Moody's did. However, our financial advisor is recommending that the district take a look at paying for a rating from Standard & Poor's as well.
Okay.
So all of those ideas are on the table, and I'll give the board a lot of credit for very quickly reacting to that credit report. We just received it in April, and the board shifted gears for one of the drafts of the budget, reacted to that, and then presented a budget tonight. And so it was pretty fast, actually, where the board received that information and then basically shifted gears to react to put the community in a better position moving forward. So it was a pretty quick response, and I do think as Moody's takes another look at our district next spring, it'll be a more positive view.
And I would suggest that the Standard & Poor's thing might not be a bad idea. Because
Sure.
my first question when I hear Moody's downgrade is to ask, well, what are the other agencies doing? So.
Sure.
I would like to give the credit to Steve, because he's the one who actually had to write everything up. We just voted yes or no.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Any other comments?
I think it might be important, Steve, to say, when would we get another rating so that we would have an idea if it would affect the future referendum?
It should come sometime around April or May of 2022. That's when Moody's would do theirs.
Another comment?
So my name is Milana Lutz. I'm a student at the Waunakee High School. I live on 1418 Blue Ridge Trail, and I just want to make sure that the DEI is going to be a safe place for me and students like me to bring our concerns and our beliefs and opinions forth, because I am worried that I will go and I will speak out about something that's important to me, and I will be shut down or treated differently because of who I am or a disability that I have. So that's all.
Thank you. Thank you for your sharing that concern, and I would hate to see that happen. But DEI means we want to include and accept, and that's what we want. We want to make this about students and how people respond to not only our committee, but everybody that you have to deal with at school. That's why we want this moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Heinbecker, 306 West 3rd Street, Waunakee. I just want to make a comment also about the TIF. It's $10 million, and I heard what you had to say. As a village member, I will be pushing back on our village board to deny that TIF to that company. We've had 2 requests already that have been denied, and I just don't see a need for it. But glad to hear what you guys are going to look at. Also, in regards to what that young woman said, I came to the school board, not to the school board, to the high school 16 years ago when my children were here with racial problems. And I was told by the principal at that time, actually a guidance counselor first, that they were aware of racial issues, but there was nothing they could do about it. When I went to the principal to withdraw my students from the school district, he told me that he was sad to see them go, but he understood that I didn't want it done on the backs of my children. I hope that DEI will listen to these kids who came forward, hear what they have to say, because it's been 16 years and it's still happening. And from what I heard, it's worse now than what it was when my sons were here. So I hope you have a good path forward that all kids can get a decent, fair, equitable education here in Waunakee, and you are truly the school district that everybody says is wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Any other comments?
Don't make those faces. Kind of on the backs of what everybody else has already said. I guess I don't understand how in the interim, while you guys get training, while you figure out your committee and all that sort of thing, exactly, we've already had the administration at our disposal to deal with different things that have come up, and that's been very ineffective, clearly. And that prompted a very clear need to have the DEI committee. I never personally saw it as an extra layer of bureaucracy. If anything, I saw it as a bridge, because there's a lack of trust there. There's a lack of trust between our youth that aren't willing to come forward. There's a lack of trust between parents that aren't willing to continue to report things that are then not acted on. Just in the last week alone, and I've brought this up recently with some of the board members, there's been literal and without exaggeration sexual assaults, multiple, just in the middle school alone. My daughter's no longer in the middle school, but it happened when she was there. Multiple parents, and I've had since then, since bringing that up, and I'm talking 4th degree sexual assault, and that feel free to check into that one or do whatever legal things you need to do to check into the veracity of that. But that happened. And the reason why that didn't go further is because of the climate that exists in our schools. To me, that's the kind of climate that can't be allowed to exist for one more minute. And we were providing hope to our kids that these kinds of things were going to be addressed by virtue of the DEI committee, because there are people on that committee that do listen to what's going on in the community. It's pretty sad to me that there are several members of this particular board that don't actually know what is being said and done in the community. So I'd like to understand how that's suddenly going to change, where you're going to suddenly build that trust and have your pulse and listen to what people in the community are saying when they don't actually trust anything's going to happen with the administration. You had some trust with folks that were part of that DEI committee, that people, and those kids especially, were willing to speak up to people that they knew were going to listen to them. If that trust had already existed with the current administration, and I'm not faulting everyone, I'm just saying if that trust already existed with the current board and the current administration, you would not have even needed a whole entire committee formed to begin with. So I'd like to understand what we're supposed to tell our kids
30 seconds.
in the interim. That's my question. So how do we address these things? Are we just supposed to just continue to let them go and fingers crossed you guys are going to figure it out and then we're going to address it? That's just my question.
Joan,
Yeah, Mark.
can I respond?
Sure.
I appreciate your concern and advocacy for the DEI. I think the September 27th engagement meeting about DEI has shed a great deal of light on student concerns. My position alone, that's student safety and sense of belonging, access to resources is a key mission of ours. And I don't see a connection between reframing the committee and keeping the committee. That's not taking a part of the committee. That's not a dissolving of the committee. We're going to be extending the role of the committee in some form going forward as soon as possible. The original committee did an outstanding job. They had really probably an impossible job with all the goals they were tasked by us. And I think that they would have even been more successful with a narrower charter And so that's something we're looking at doing. But I assure anyone who's listening, dissolving the committee was a wrong term to apply to what we're doing. We're refining it. There is a committee this year. There will be this year, I should say, and hopefully it will continue until the need no longer exists. Committees are reshaped every year by the BOE. It's very unusual for a committee to last more than 1 year. The membership typically is renewed with different participants each additional year that their information. So I assure you, we're going to do the best we can for the students, and thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Diane Trice-Rusk, 4967 Meadowside Lane. And I did serve on the ad hoc committee, and one of my recommendations as you go forth and consider who will be on this. I understand from listening to last week's meeting that it may be unusual to have people in the community and others outside of administration and the board on your standing committees. One of my observations serving on the committee, and we worked very hard, and it took some time, I think, for all of us to create a working relationship so that we could really delve into the seriousness of the work and look at the data. And one of the richness was that we had broad representation from students, from community, from teachers, from individuals who worked outside of the classroom but still within the school, and students. I hope I already said that. If I didn't, I should have said that first. And then, of course, administrators. And I think because there was that kind of roundedness, we were able to hear and process information from both the practice side of things, from what we were seeing as community members, some parents of previous students. And I hope that you will have a breadth of committee members so that we can have all of those voices as part of the committee and not have it restricted to a very small group. Thank you.
Absolutely. And that I really feel that that is our mission, to include all those voices. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to address the board? Seeing none, I guess we can go to adjournment.
Hi, Melissa Elmanuel, 208 Fairmouth Drive. Cass's question wasn't answered, the lack of trust that exists and the reason why the DEI ad hoc committee was needed in the first place. I think that there's going to be a real gap there that needs to be addressed, and I'm wondering how you guys are going to do that.
Could I ask a question of the DEI committee? And maybe I am naive and I need an education. Did you have, I know you had 2 students on your committee. In addition to that, was your committee a place where students went to when they had a concern? I mean, did you have a forum that you could, we heard, a couple weeks ago on Monday, many concerns. I mean, I guess I just...
So to answer that question, we actually had 3 students.
Okay.
And we actually didn't have students come to us.
All right.
But the thing is that working with Tim Shell, we were talking about a recording tool, right?
And I do really appreciate that, and I'm hoping that that is still in the works, and I will reach out to Tim and see, because students need a place to come, and if it isn't our administration, I mean, we do need a place for them to come.
But the problem is that there's also challenges there. Because the thing is, it is about trust. A lot of the information that I get is because I have people screenshot something, tell me it. There's a lot of stuff you guys don't know because people are not going to come to you and tell you. And that was really what we're trying to say. That trust has to be built, but it's not just the board's taking care of it, and then they're just gonna add people to it. And I think until that message changes and we actually see action, and we start seeing that the people who want to do the work and the work is being done, then I feel like as a group, meaning the board, the administration, the community, then we can get to that place.
Well, I hope that we can join those forces, Joel. I mean, that would be my hope, that what you've done and what you've seen can be part of our lens, so we have that fuller picture.
But we do get a lot of information that's happening in our community, in our school district, that you guys just do not know about.
Yeah, I think building the trust with our students is our number one priority. As adults, we're always gonna mistrust each other, especially going, forward, because we have different beliefs. But our kids are why we're here, and that's our number one priority, is make sure that they build, trust and that they have a safe place to go. So I think that's where our focus needs to be. We have several groups on campus. I hope the board members around this table take time to individually go to talk to students in those groups that we have on campus. So,
And maybe we could bring some of those student groups to the board.
well, I think it's more we go to them. I think that's more important than them come here. Let's go talk to them in a classroom or in their space. So
This is intimidating here.
I can't even believe the strength it takes for a student to walk up to something like this, or even the community engagement meeting, or even to go to a DEI committee meeting. But you can go to their meetings. I know I attended a bunch of the GSA meetings and groups like that, and that is their safe place. That's where it's their meeting and they talk.
You're right.
That's where we should be. We can't expect them to be here.
I don't think we can solve all these questions tonight. I think we're reforming a, kind of an internal group to evaluate and how do we move forward. There's questions on both sides. We talked about trust. We got to build the community.
What do you,
What is-
I'm
yeah, what
sorry,
is
can
both
you
sides?
clarify? What do you mean, there's questions on both sides? Both sides of what? What questions? I guess I'm trying to understand.
I'm not here to argue
I'm not. I
with
just wanna
anybody.
understand.
All I'm saying is we have to build community trust.
I agree.
So isn't DEI just one thing? It shouldn't be both sides.
Exactly.
We also were talking about community trust. We're talking about the students being able to trust when they are having something happen to them. And who do they turn to? Who do they trust that they can turn to? It's not about the community trust. It's about the student.
I have another parent come to me, like I've had 3 different parents this week come to me about their daughter having been sexually assaulted, 4th degree at least, if not worse, in the school during school hours. What are they supposed to do?
Why aren't they going to Randy Gutenberg, our superintendent?
Because the climate that exists in the school, and I'm telling you this, from experience, from personal experience, the climate that exists in the school currently needs to be addressed. Because there's a reason why these kids and these families back down from it. Because of the environment, the hostile environment that's allowed to persist. But who's listening? Nobody's listening.
It's exactly why I pulled my kids out of school 16 years ago. It hasn't changed up there since. These kids are going through hell. They have nobody to turn to. And where are they supposed to go? I went to the principal. I went to a guidance counselor on behalf of my kids. I was told they were aware of racial issues and there was nothing they could do. The principal told me he was sorry I was pulling my kids out of school, but he understood that he didn't want it on the backs of my children. I mean, what's changed? Nothing has changed up there from what I can tell. I heard the kids at the DEI meeting.
Yeah, let me answer a couple things here. First of all, I do agree with the comment about if we're going to talk to the kids, we should go to their space. I mean, that's a piece we've seen as far as how we can connect in there. And any board member who wants to have a conversation with some of our students, that's an important piece, and we can make sure that happens. If we have sexual assaults happening in our schools, I've got to know about it, Cass. I can't, I mean, whether you're a DEI committee or not, if you have that information, it's got to get shared. Otherwise, I can't do anything about it. Neither can Jeff, who's sitting behind you. I mean, we've got to be able to know if those things are happening, how can we move forward? If not bringing it to us, then it goes to the police. It goes somewhere that it moves it forward. I mean, to me, that's really concerning that I learn about it here at an annual meeting, as opposed to somebody kind of calling us and letting us know what's going on in our schools, or going to the police if we actually have criminal actions going on. Those are things we take extremely seriously and we address every time we see them.
There were police involved in one specific incident in which my family was involved. There were police, but you know what happened? Once again, the environment in the school, not by the young man that was involved in it, but the rest of the kids, caused that young lady to back down and not go any further with pressing charges. And that is not the first person, once word got out that my family had been involved in the situation. I had other parents come to me and say the same thing, and that's why they didn't go forward with pressing charges, because those girls, multiple girls, not just one, not just two, I'm talking multiple girls, and just this week alone, 3 more families came to me and said the same thing. Their children, because of the environment that exists, their children, and especially because of the students that were involved, their children were pressured out of going anywhere with it and going further. And that's part of the reason why they were very disconcerted about the dissolution of something like the DEI committee, because as I said when I was up there, that committee, I'm not saying it was the answer and the be all and the end all, but there are people on that committee that have some community trust already, that people in this community felt like they were listened to, they were heard, and they were going to actually take some sort of action in conjunction with the board, in conjunction with the administration, because there wasn't already trust and all of that there. And so I'm not necessarily faulting you guys, but the fact that you dissolved that last week, I don't think you understand. It was like breaking a promise to a whole lot of kids, especially those kids that have been brave enough to stand up and speak 2 weeks ago, and even before that, back in July when we did the community forum, those kids stood up and they spoke. And for them to say that this committee is dissolved and we're going to reformulate it and all that kind of stuff, what happened to the reports that you were given 2 weeks ago at the forum at the PAC? Did anybody do anything with that? You had students right there. You had one young man who stood up and said he was being bullied just that very day in the parking lot, leaving the parking lot. You're the board. You said you're going to handle it, and it should be handled by you guys. So did you guys act on that? Did you guys follow up with that student and act on what he told you? That's my point.
I just want to add to that, Jack, it's also the way you responded, right? So my thing is that the board is going to take on DEI and I get a response the way you did, and you're on the committee, why would I trust that you're going to focus on the things that are important? The minute you start saying there's 2 sides to it, then it's already done. And
we don't have time to talk about it anymore tonight.
Yeah, that's it. We'll meet, we'll let you guys know. So again,
Joe, if you'd like me to get off the committee, that's fine. I think we have to bring this committee, the community together. I believe in the DEI, but I think what we've got to do is bring the entire community together.
I agree.
So, if you're going to attack me because I'm on the committee and you don't believe me, I think I've been very fair with the people that I've dealt with.
Jack, I'm not, it's not about you. It's bigger than all of us. That's what I'm just trying to say. At the end of the day, it's those kids. It's those kids that you heard from. It's those kids that are going into the schools, being called names. Again, you guys can't do everything on your own. Right? And we're not expecting you to. It's a hard job. And again, I wasn't attacking you, but what I'm saying is that when I hear a response like that, that just means, okay, we'll deal with that later. DEI is not something we deal with later. Everybody's doing it. Hospitals, my job, every job is doing it. Hiring directors, I mean, it's a big thing. It's not just this. So I'm just trying to point out that, yes, this community is a great community, but we do have to work on certain things. And this is one of the things we have to work on. That's all I'm trying to say. So I'm not trying to attack your character.
Joe, can I offer a quick response?
Sure.
I think we as a board share more of your vision than people accept. Last Monday's, the 9/27 engagement meeting really struck the heart of a lot of us with the testimony and the courage to share their experiences from our students. And quite frankly, what I heard at that meeting was why I was so supportive of the DEI from the get-go. And I think most of my board members felt the same way. Somehow this concept of dissolving of the DEI has, and I know it came out in a news release, but dissolving is not the right word. The DEI is going to exist this year, but we are reframing it, plus membership, hopefully to be as effective or more so than the initial one. I think there were tons of people on the committee, but sometimes a committee with almost 30 members is unwieldy. We like to maintain the broad voice of the community. Add student increase, because out of the 28 memberships, only 4 of them were students. And keep the representation. So I just assure you, from my perspective at least, the DEI is a top priority.
I think as a community member, just to speak out, since I attend way more school board meetings, I'd like to admit that it's vitally important that if you do feel strongly on this topic, that you come and you publicly, and I know it's intimidating, but it gets better over time, I assure you, that you come and you voice your support for these things. I can't believe I'm going to defend what happened last week a little bit, but it seemed to add strength to the DEI committee to reform it as a standing committee as opposed to an ad hoc committee. Simply because ad hoc by itself is not permanent in nature. It's, I heard from the majority of the board members involved that they wanted to see it be a standing committee so that it could continue to move forward with the focus. I don't think it's inappropriate that it would be run by a school board member. I mean, if you don't like your school board members, you can vote them out every few years anyway. But there was an opening that Dave Betcher actually put forward to say that get over that mentality that committees need to be school board members only, that they would open up to the public. I believe it. I mean, they're recorded. They're not saying this out loud. They know that they can be held accountable for it. But the reality is, and I don't see that crowd here tonight that normally comes to those meetings to speak against DEI, which is interesting to me. But anyway, if you come and you support it and you show that this is the right direction and you give your guidance through public comment, it can be far more effective. I understand there's a lot of emotion tonight. I'm probably going to see people angry for my comments, but it's really important to just come and show your support for these items. The board members do listen. I've never found them to be disrespectful, even when there have been times where I've been borderline disrespectful in some board members' opinions. So it's just, I cannot stress enough as a community member and supporter of DEI that you do have to come and express your thoughts on this. You can send emails to the board members. You can meet with them directly. They're all very receptive, even if you guys don't agree on fundamental things. They will listen. That's what they're elected to do. So sorry, it's off my soapbox, but it is a little rough because I do come to these meetings and I've had to endure weeks of people telling me about how DEI is the devil and all sorts of other things. So, it'd be nice to hear some other people come and speak in support of it if they feel that strongly, and not just show up at one meeting. Thank you.
Any other member of the community want to address the board? Seeing none, I'll take motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Stay here and have a seat.
Thanks for coming.